Now that Krishna has kind of presented a certain overview of the knowledge of that ultimate reality, he goes on to quote two mantras from one of the Upanishads, the Kathopanishad. He quotes two verses from that Upanishad. The verses of the Upanishad are called mantras or richas because they are part of the Veda, as I told you in the previous video. So Krishna will quote two verses from the Upanishad. Ya enam vetti hantaram, yaschainam manyate hatam, ubhau tau na vijanito, nayam hanti na hanyate. He who thinks of this Atma as the killer, and he who thinks of this Atma as the killed, both do not know it. This Atma neither kills nor is it killed. So this is taken from the Kathopanishad, where the conversation is between Yama, the Lord of Death, and a young boy named Nachiketa. Nachiketa wanted to know the true self, and Lord Yama is teaching him about it. The verse looks fairly simple in light of all that we have been talking about so far, but there is one crucial point here which we have to understand. The verse says, he who thinks of this Atma as the killer and he who thinks of this Atma as the killed, both do not know it. The word kill covers all actions over here. First of all, you need to remember this. So what the verse is implying is that Atma or the self is beyond all action. It is beyond all actions and their effects. It neither does anything nor is it affected by anything. This is because all actions and their results are mithya. They are all merely a play of laws of nature. The laws of nature are working as they should, and everything is unfolding as it should. The pure consciousness, the self, has no involvement in it. It does not cause anything because there is nothing to cause really. What will it cause? There is no entity other than the Atma, right? Nor does it get affected by anything because there is nothing else to affect it. The only thing that there really is Atma. So all causing and affecting and actions and results are merely an appearance. Do not consider them as real. This is a very, very important point philosophically also, in the context of the philosophy of the Gita, and it is also an important life lesson. We often think, oh, why did this happen to me? Why did this pain come upon me? Why do I have to go through this difficulty? We often think like this. But the fact is that I, the self, is neither the doer, it is not the doer. The word for doer is karta. Karta. So the self is akarta. It is non-doer. Nor does it enjoy or receive the effect of any actions. So it is not a bhokta also. It is not an enjoyer. It is akarta, abhokta. This is the main point that Krishna is trying to make here. And if we try to bring this idea in our life to some extent and learn to see all our circumstances as a third person, as an observer, like it is not happening to me per se, it is happening and I am the observer, then perhaps we will not feel so overpowered by them. We will not feel so weak, and we will not suffer so much. Right? So it's an important life lesson that we can inculcate, and we need to inculcate if we want to know that reality about ourselves. Further, Krishna says, "Na jayate mriyate va kadachi, nayam bhutva bhavita va na bhuyah, ajo nityah shashvato yam purano, na hanyate hanyamane sharire." Never is this Atma born, never does it die, nor is it that having come to exist it will cease to be. It is unborn, undying, eternal, and the most ancient. It is not killed when the body is killed. This is another verse taken from the Kathopanishad. Now notice that the meter of the verse has changed. The meter or chanda of the earlier verses was anushtup, where there are 16 syllables in each line. The meter of this verse is trishtup, which has 11 syllables in each line. The main focus of this verse is to negate all kinds of changes in Atma. The Atma does not take birth. Anything that takes birth undergoes change. So by saying that the Atma does not take birth, the changes pertaining to birth are negated. Similarly, changes pertaining to death are also negated by saying that Atma never dies. And then it says, Nayam bhutva bhavita vana bhuyah. While it exists, it does not undergo any change, like the body is seen to change from one state to another. Such changes are also not there in the Atma. It is aja, ajanma, unborn. Something which is born implies it was not there before birth. But since Atma was always there is no question of birth. And similarly, there is no question of death. Thus it is nitya. It is shashvata, eternal. And then an interesting new word is used, Purana. The word means ancient. What it means here is that this Atma it comes before anything else can come. It's the most fundamental. It's the absolute truth of it all. That's what it indicates. Right? And it is also used to negate any kind of change from old to new. There is no such change in the Atma. So, all possible changes are negated in the self, and therefore it is only right to say that bodies perish, but Atma does not. And now, let's move on to the next verse. Veda vinashinam nityam ya enam ajamavyayam katham sa purushah partha kam ghatayati hantikam. Know this Atma as indestructible, permanent, unborn and unchanging. How can the man who knows it slay or cause to be slain, O Partha? So this verse first summarizes the main ideas presented in the last few verses. In the first lines, it says it negates all possibility of change in the Atma. It says, know this Atma to be indestructible, permanent, unborn and unchanging. Right? So it kind of summarizes all that has been said so far about the Atma. And then it says that someone who knows this fact about the self can never say, I have done this or I have been affected by that. He would never consider the self to be the doer of actions or the enjoyer of results. He would never consider the self to be karta and bhokta. Why? Because action implies change, and the self is necessarily unchanging. You may question, why is the self necessarily unchanging? How can we be so sure of this? Well, we can be sure of one thing at least, and that is that the self exists. Can we ever doubt this fact? We cannot. Even to doubt this fact, there must be a doubter. So the self necessarily exists. And if it exists, then it cannot be a changing entity, because something that changes has no existence of its own. It always has its existence in something else, like pot has its existence in clay. So if we accept that the self exists, then we must accept that it is unchanging. And if we accept that, then we have to accept that it is beyond all actions and results. This is the logic given by the Gita. Now, this being the case, the wise person, the jnani, is considered a non-doer. He neither does anything nor gets affected by anything. His mind and body may continue to act, but in his buddhi, in his intellect, there is always clear knowledge that I am not the doer, that self is not the doer. By the virtue of this simple knowledge, he is free from the cycle of birth and death. The whole cycle of birth and death is only for the ignorant, only for the one who considers the self as the doer. He is the one who remains caught in the cycle of action and result, cause and effect. But one who knows himself as the unchanging Atma, which neither causes nor is it affected, who knows how all of this is mere appearance, he doesn't get deluded by the whole game of actions. He is always free from it. But this does not mean he doesn't engage in the world. He continues to live in the world like you and me, yet he is free. He is not entangled in actions. His body and mind act, but he knows himself as the non-doer always. So it may seem like he is the doer, yet he is not a doer, by the virtue of his knowledge of his true non-doer self. Okay, this is a very, very crucial point. Gita will talk about it more in chapters 4 and 5. Okay, we will keep coming back to this. So think over it more. And as I said, we can learn something very useful for our lives from this. We need to stop taking everything that is happening to us so personally. We have to learn to see our life as a third person and handle situations as a third person. This will help us reduce our deep-rooted identification with this body-mind complex, and it will help us reduce our sense of doership and enjoyership. Right now, we see ourselves as the doer and enjoyer, and whatever is happening in my life is happening to me. This is why we feel so deeply entangled in our life and circumstances. We are constantly thinking about it. Oh, this is happening to me. Oh, I have to do this. Oh, why did this happen to me? But now, imagine if it was not happening to you, it was happening to someone else, a friend or a colleague or someone else, you will still feel empathetic, but you will not feel overwhelmed. You will not feel overpowered. Why? Because it is not happening to you. It is happening to your friend or somebody else. You will be able to clearly see what needs to be done. Right? When you have the problem, then you can't think clearly. When your friend has the problem, you can give him a very good advice. Why? Because in both situations, you know what is to be done. But the difference is, in the first situation, because you think that it is happening to you, you get so confused and entangled in the whole thing that you can't think clearly. Whereas in the second situation, when it is happening to your friend or somebody, then you don't get so overpowered, you don't get so overwhelmed, you can give good advice. So develop this attitude towards your own life. Become a trustee of your life. Yes, become a trustee of your life. Become a trustee of all your possessions, all your relationships, everything. What does a trustee do? He doesn't think of things as his own. He's a trustee. He only has to take care of them to the best of his ability. That's his job. Right? So you too must have to become a trustee of your life. Arjuna was a trustee. He had to perform his role. Right? In this manner, we can slowly learn to reduce our identification with the body-mind complex and come closer to that reality. So just try it and you will immediately feel lighter and freer about your life. Now comes a very famous verse of the Gita. It's a very famous verse. Nearly everybody who talks about the Gita knows this verse. Vasamsi jirnani yatha vihai navani grinati naroparani tatha sharirani vihaya jirnani anyani sanyati navani dehi. Just as a man casts off worn-out clothes and puts on new ones, so also the self casts off worn-out bodies and accepts others which are new. So the verse is giving an example to stress upon the unchanging nature of Atma as compared to the changing nature of the body. The example is that just as a person wears new clothes and discards old clothes, the same person, similarly, the same Atma is the underlying true self for old bodies and new bodies. It remains unaffected and unchanged. Okay. But here we have to clarify a common misconception about Atma. People think that Atma is that entity which travels from one body to another body. No, that is not the Atma. That is the Sukshma Sharira. Remember the Sukshma Sharira which I explained in the introductory videos? That subtle body is the one which literally travels from one body to another. Because it travels, it is changing. And because it is changing, it is mithya. It is not the true self. The true self is unchanging. Remember this, please. And so it cannot possibly be traveling anywhere. Secondly, Sukshma Sharira is different for different individuals. Your Sukshma is different from mine. And mine Sukshma is different from the Sukshma of Adi Shankaracharya. But Atma is one and the same for all of us. Past, present, future, everyone, everything. Atma is one. Atma is one, undivided and all-pervasive. There isn't more than one Atma. There is only one undivided Atma, and it is the truth of all and everything. So don't think that this verse is saying that the Atma is the one who goes from one body to another body. No, that is the Sukshma Sharira. This verse is giving this example only to point out the unchanging nature of Atma as compared to body. Okay, so here you must also understand that this is why we don't use the word soul for Atma. Okay, in a lot of places you will find this translation, soul, but we don't use it. The correct word to use for Atma is self. That is the literal translation of the word Atma also. You need not use the word soul for Atma. Nor do you need to use it for Sukshma Sharira. The word for Sukshma Sharira is subtle body. So just discard the word soul from your dictionary when it comes to Vedanta and the Gita. The word soul comes from a totally different philosophical context, where it has a totally different meaning, totally different attributes and properties and nature. So I would advise you to not use the word soul. Use the word self for Atma and subtle body for Sukshma Sharira. And know the difference between the two. Further, Krishna says, Nainam chindanti shastrani, nainam dahati pavakah, nachainam klediyantyapo, na shoshayati marutah. Weapons do not cut it. Fire does not burn it. Water does not moisten it. And air does not dry it. It's a poetic way of saying the same thing, and it's a very well-known verse of the Gita again. And it's a very simple verse to understand if you have been following everything so far. That bodies can be cut and burnt and made wet and dry. But Atma, the pure consciousness, is untouched by it all. Why? Because all this cutting, burning, wetting, drying, it's only an appearance. It is mithya. Atma is the only reality. It's like you watch a movie, and in the movie there is a war scene, and people are dying, people are killing each other. But does any of all this affect the film reel? The reel? No, it does not. Right? So similarly, all of this, what is happening in and around us, does not affect the true self. Achedyo ayam, adhayo ayam, akledyo ayam, ashoshya evacha, nityah sarvagatah sthanur, achlo ayam sanatana. It cannot be cut, it cannot be burnt, cannot be moistened, and surely cannot be dried up. It is permanent, all-pervading, stationary, unmoving, and eternal. The first line repeats the ideas of the previous verse. The second line again uses the word nitya, which means eternal. Sarvagata, all pervasive. Atma is the truth of it all. And then notice the word sthanu, which means stationary. As I said, Atma does not move or travel. It is already everywhere, so where will it go? And it is unchanging, so any kind of movement has to be ruled out. To stress the same fact, it also says achala, it is unmoving. And it is sanatana, which also means eternal. It is not something which was not there in some period of time and then it originated. No, it is not like that. It has always been. It is not limited by time in any way. It is sanatana, eternal. Right? So simple verse. Another verse. Avyakto ayam, achintyo ayam, avikaryo ayam uchyate, tasmadevam viditvainam nanushochitum arhasi. This Atma is said to be unperceivable, unobjectifiable by the mind, and unchangeable. Therefore, knowing it to be such, you do not deserve to grieve, Arjuna. So, again, some very interesting words are used to indicate the same facts about Atma which we have been seeing so far. It is avyakta, which means not available for perception. The eyes cannot see it, ears cannot hear it, nose cannot smell it, you cannot touch it. Why? Because it is the very truth of all the senses. as I mentioned earlier. It is aprameya, not an object. It is achintya. It is not even an object for the mind, because it is the truth of the mind also. Right? So it is avyakta as well as achintya. And it is avikari. It does not undergo change. The same thing that we have been saying on and on, but Krishna needs to repeat it because people still mistake Atma to be a changing entity. And Krishna says, therefore, Arjuna, do not be deluded by the appearances. Understand the unchanging reality of yourself and everything else, and simply fulfill your duty.